Over the years, mental health has taken over the world by storm. According to statistics released by the Ministry of Health and Social Services, the country's suicide rate between January 2021 and May 2022 has skyrocketed to 679 people, comprising of 559 men and 91 women, of which 29 were children, and of these children, 18 were boys and 11 were girls. Namibian men are taking their lives at a higher rate than women. There has been a dramatic rise in the frequency and magnitude of suicide and mental health incidents in the country, especially around men, threatening large populations living in diverse communities with little to no information or understanding to what mental health is.
Mental health is basically health, but that has to do with your mind, your mental capacity.
So when you speak about mental health, we are speaking about your psychological well-being. This is about your mental well-being.
Mental health has to do with the mental, the psychological and emotional aspect of a human being.
Mental health, I think, is such a personal topic, and I think once you place yourself first, your spirit, your zen, your being, your presence, your ultimate way of how you feel. I think that for me is what mental health means.
Mental health, I think sometimes it's a term that's used so easily, especially in today's culture. But mental health to me means, our emotional well-being or not well-being, that influences different behaviors and how we handle situations in our everyday journeys, obviously depending on where your mental health is at. Same thing like our physical health.
For me, mental health speaks to the idea that you live within yourself, and if inside of yourself things are not right, in terms of your thought patterns, in terms of what you think of yourself, how you relate to yourself, whether you like yourself or you don't like yourself, or in terms of whether you're holding on to past hurts. Mental health speaks a lot to what is inside of you and how you deal with it.
My experiences with mental health have been, so many experiences, but I lost a friend to mental health, so that's probably one of the worst experiences that I have had to go through. So I would say a lot of experiences, but losing people is always the worst.
It's been quite an interesting journey. Firstly, I think we always see it as a taboo, for instance, for Black or colored men or boys, even young people in society. So you never want to really speak about it because you're scared it shows weakness.
The biggest challenge that I've had with mental health is breaking away from the cultural expectations that are placed on men.
One of the major symptoms that we look at it when we hear the topic of mental health, we look at the things like feelings of sadness, and then also people tend to reduce interest in the things that they used to enjoy the most. Let's take, for example, you know your hobbies, you know the things that you like doing on weekends or maybe after work, and then you tend to reduce your interest in those things. We also think of the mood swings. These are the frequencies of the highs and the lows. This week you are very happy, and then next week you're very sad. And then there is also feelings of irritability. The person doesn't want to associate with the people. They just want to be lonely. There's also a lot of feelings of emptiness. This person just feels like they're useless. Nothing really makes sense around them.
Because mental health is something that you can't see, it's hard to actually speak on symptoms. But I guess some of the biggest symptoms would always be like a person on their own, always alone, spending time with themselves. A person who's, you become antisocial, you become less interested in socializing. So I would say, when people are alone, I think it's one of the worst symptoms.
depending on whether it's positive and negative, some of the symptoms, I would say if it's a positive, if you've got a positive outlook in terms of your mental health, which is positive, I think you're comfortable in your skin, you're okay to be by yourself, because so many times people always talk about, you know what, someone that goes through mental health problems are people that would rather shy away from people. But I think sometimes there's also so much healing in being by yourself, finding your peace, and I think that becomes much more evident, especially when you grow older, where you realize that there's so much gratitude and fulfillment by being by yourself and also having the right type of people around you.
Okay, some of the causes of mental health is the things like the stressful events that we've been through in our lives. We can think of death when you lose a loved one. We can think of the things like stressful events like being involved in an accident, divorce, relationship problems. And then there are also things like mental illnesses, like you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness. It also have a negative impact on your mental well-being. And then we also think of financial problems. They can also cause mental health. Love relationship between our friends, family, and other people. It can also have an impact on our mental health, especially when it doesn't go the way we expect it to go. And then mental health can also be blood-related. You can be in a family where there's history of mental illnesses.
A practical example would be in situations where a guy wakes up one morning and he decides to beat up his girlfriend. Or somebody decides that for the next 2-3 days or whatever it is, this person is consistently just overdoing alcohol, like drinking way excessively. Those are some of the symptoms that you look at, you will identify as something is potentially wrong with this person.
The key aspects of mental health, they are basically in 3 forms. So mental health basically affects the way you think, the way you act, and the way you feel about yourself. So those are the 3 things that mental health affects.
It's so difficult, because what I have personally done is compartmentalized all my personal traumas and deal with it when I think it's needed, and by saying that, I think I'm also being a bit vulnerable by sharing that. I think a lot of people deal with their personal issues like it's this heavy burden of I'm going through X, Y, and that sort of just allows them to shy away from the entire world.
Yes, there is cure for mental health. So we do have 2 forms, which is medication and psychotherapy. Medication is you going to the psychiatry, the doctors, and then you get medication for the specific mental health that you're having. And then psychotherapy is when you visit social workers, therapists, and counselors to get sessions and also for psychosocial support.
Depression is one of the most common mental illnesses, affecting around 322 million individuals in the world. Although the prevalence of depression is high and its treatment is effective, little is known about its pooled prevalence and help-seeking behaviors in the community setting of Namibia.
What does it mean to be depressed? I think to be depressed means to be unhappy, to be unsatisfied, to not see purpose in living.
When we say we're suffering from depression, it's that barrier in your mental health that keeps you from seeing the good in a situation. It keeps you from being optimistic.
Depression is a major psychological disorder that basically affects the way you feel, think, and act about yourself. When one is depressed, they tend to lose interest in most of the things that they used to enjoy, like I mentioned before. When you look at your friends, you tend to see that probably they withdrew from social media. They don't take part in the cues that we used to do before. They're just sad. Basically, when a person is in this state, nothing totally makes sense in their life. Causes of depression are often associated with various situations that we go along in our lives every day. It can be illnesses. When one has been diagnosed with chronic illnesses, let's say, for example, you've been told that you have stage 4 cancer, you are likely to get depressed just because is definitely going to affect the way you're going to feel, think, and act about yourself. Alcohol and drug abuse can also cause depression the moment you excessively take alcohol and drugs.
Pretty much anything which makes you unhappy that you can't get control over.
I think about this year, we looked at about 800 within a year's time, and most of it was men. Almost 80, more than 90% of it was men.
I've had to struggle to relate to certain emotions, because when I was faced with these emotions, they were foreign to me. And that's why I went to seek therapy. And through therapy, I could understand and relate to these emotions.
You just want to be by yourself. You tend to reduce interest in the things that you like. You liked social media, you go off social media. You liked going out with your friends. You just want to be by yourself. There's a lot of sleep disorders. You just want to sleep. It's basically in that state when you feel like you are in the dark walls.
No man wants to look weak amongst his peers or amongst anybody. So, I mean, seeking for help, even just seeking for ordinary help, like I need $10 and asking for it, it's also seen as weak for a man to do that. So, like any time a man seeks for help, they look weak or appear weak.
You cannot be a man if you cry in front of people. You cannot be a man if you share your problems to other people. And you cannot be a man if you pour out your weakness in front of people. So which is why they just tend to keep everything within their hearts, battle everything within their hearts, and not share it with the necessary people where they can actually find solutions.
What is a real man? What is a real woman? I see a lot of quotes that state, oh, you don't find real men anymore because they don't open a door for women. According to whose definition does that make a real man? So, and what type of standards are we placing upon men? And that boils down to the notion of, blue is for boys and pink is for girls. I think if we still live in a society like that, then we need to start questioning quite a lot.
Mental health stigma impedes black men from seeking help. Depression is a treatable mental illness. Despite its huge impact and availability of effective treatment, vast majority of individuals who suffer from mental illness do not have access to treatment for their problems.
Toxic masculinity is attitudes of behaving often associated or stereotypically associated with men.
Toxic masculinity, it's stuff like that, like men feeling like another man seeking for help is weak. I think that's toxic masculinity in itself, because that's almost like I don't want him to get help and to get better because he looks weak when he's trying to get better. I don't know, man. It's very something very hard to explain, because I myself don't suffer from it. I never want to be toxic in someone's life. So
we have to stop this by knowing that despite being a man or a woman, we go through the same. We all need to have our psychological well-being, social well-being, and emotional well-being at a stable state.
Also, toxic masculinity is how the boy child is raised, We're raised in a sense that a boy doesn't cry. That in itself is where most of men are introduced to toxic masculinity.
It stems from cultural beliefs that the man has been there and the man needs to take the lead, and it's all about the man on the forefront. So that toxic masculinity has caused a lot of what we see within today's age, which is gender-based violence, SGBV, because it's about the men not being able to express, but the man also having to constantly take the lead, and this man being told, but you can't be vulnerable, you can't show anything.
Toxic masculinity. In the simplest terms, I see that as the male generation, I would say a couple of generations before ours, having made it in life, that's with like family settings, professional settings, in their personal one-on-one lives, and wanting to push down their beliefs or ideologies of how to make it in life down on even on men.
So toxic masculinity essentially is the idea that there are certain things that men are expected to do, but they are very detrimental or hurtful towards the man himself or society.
Yes, toxic masculinity actually affects mental health just because these are attitudes that men have. These are maybe the ways of behaving that men do. And most of the times they don't allow themselves to express themselves, and they just tend to keep everything within themselves.
Of late, I've seen a lot of like safe spaces, sort of, when you're looking at physical safe spaces that come up that make it comfortable for black men, to sort of be vulnerable. And whether that's a social place or whether that is a professional setting, I've seen it a lot more.
To be honest, I wouldn't think that we really have enough safe spaces. What generally happens in today's world is I have an encounter somewhere. I call up a friend. I say, this and this happened. My friend says, come over. We sit and drink a few beers, or we play a game, or we play Xbox, PlayStation, or we watch a soccer game, and we don't really get to address the issue. And all I get is, I'm told you'll be fine. You're a man. And that in itself is toxic.
Nah, I don't think men have safe spaces at all, because any time you and your boys have an argument, they might remind you like, hey man, isn't it you who was crying, So man, it's a bit, I don't think men have a lot of safe spaces.
Okay, there are actually safe spaces for men, for them to actually go and speak about how they feel. We do have Lifeline, Childline. We do have social workers. We also do have maybe the community leaders. We also do have the trusted family members, where you can actually go to them and be able to speak about how you feel.
We actually really have to create real safe spaces where men can be vulnerable. Identifying toxic masculinity is quite evident in how, for example, how men treat each other, how men treat the kids, the next woman. It's quite evident.
Despite its huge impact and availability of effective treatment, the vast majority of individuals who suffer from mental illnesses do not have access or do not access treatments for their problems. Although mental health problems are extremely common, stigma is still attached to them, making them difficult to talk about. Societal gender roles can dictate that when men express emotion, they are not real men. This stigma can cause men to suppress their emotions in order to present as manly and strong.
There is a lot of need to create mental health awareness among us men.
The truth is, a lot of black men end up either prison, or you find a black man going to a bar, his nearest bar, to go and for a breather.
If you look at the stats in general, you will notice that even though we don't talk about it, it's one of the things that's like a key issue within our society that all of us need to actually address.
Yes, definitely, because as men, we are subjected as the macho men, so we can't, apparently they think that we don't go through a lot of tough times, but as men, we do go through a lot of stuff.
Perception says it makes men look weak, so no man wants to look weak amongst these peers or amongst anybody. So, seeking for help, even just seeking for ordinary help, like I need $10 and asking for it, it's also seen as weak for a man to do that. So
the best way to improve is you should just focus on your goals. Try to set up a goal, try to work towards it. Rather go hit the gym so hard, or rather find a hobby, play basketball, write music, do poetry, and so forth.
The taboo of not going for medical help and perhaps speaking to someone, I think, stems from a lot of misbeliefs in black culture. And I think that black culture comes from the Lord is our shepherd. And that culture comes from black people not wanting to seek help, because black people have always fended for themselves. If it's not last week, I was watching this movie called Purple Heart, and it was such a beautiful film. Prior to watching it, I always read the synopsis, and I was like, it's another sad. I love romantic movies, and I think because there was war inflicted in this, it reminded me so much of the way my mom and dad met, because my dad is an immigrant from Angola, and this beautiful love story almost coincides with their love story. And I think why I cried was the beautiful message of please come home. And so many times we don't know where home is, and especially with the trauma that we as Africans have gone through, where and what do we call home?
Last time I cried, I think like maybe 4 weeks, maybe a month ago. Maybe a month ago I cried, yeah. What happened that made me cry was actually a thought of a friend of mine, like a friend of mine who passed away, and I was just listening to his music, and then I was just like, you know, it just hit me that like he's gone. So
the last time I cried, I remember it vividly, was last year, the 2nd of November.
I honestly can't remember.
So basically, the society, I think the one that they define as being a real man is probably like one of those serious men that are quiet, often quiet, don't really talk about how they feel.
There was like plenty of times where I thought that maybe just taking my own life is going to be an option, because I was going through tough times. Like people couldn't believe that that I'm also struggling as a person. Like, you know, when it comes to, let's say, finances, that's the main thing that I'm going to emphasize again, is that they all see me like, yo, you are all sorted, but nah, it's not. You know, we all do poetry, we all do smile in the morning, like we all do go out there, we do walk around, like we wear masks, like, you know, in the public, but when I'm alone in the room, nobody knows actually what I'm going through.
As black men, we need to teach, I think, from the small boys. I think this is the foundation. Tell the small boys that it's okay for you to cry. It's okay for you to be weak. It's okay for you to allow yourself to feel this way. I think if an elder man that kids look up to can like actually break down and discuss it and discuss their problems with mental health and with such issues, I think it will help a lot, because then kids would see that, oh, it's not something I'm suffering through alone. Like even the guy I look up to has went through it. So
it's like when you think of like a ball, for instance, and the toxic masculinity is the person stepping down on the ball or on the balloon, for instance. There's no space to really go, but you know, whoever is embodying this toxic masculinity character keeps pressuring on it, and later you'll feel like you don't know where to go. And once that balloon pops, that's when we hit things that escalate into suicide, for instance, or you know, that type of behavior.
Just because you don't have a mental health issue, it's not to say you won't have a mental health issue in the future. So the more we discuss it, the more we'll know how to heal it and treat it, the more solutions we'll find. And maybe in the future, mental health will also become something like, something taboo, but in a good way, as in like not a lot of people suffer from it.
Okay, so this message goes to the uncles, the brothers, the fathers, the friends and family. Men, that it is okay to feel the way you feel. It is very normal. You're not the only one who's going through this. A lot of people are going through the same situation that you're going through. So all you need is for you to get up from your seat and go speak about it.
Be considerate and know that everybody has their own mental health issues and problems and things that they go through. And this idea of men need to raise tough men is a good idea, but I don't think men need to raise men that aren't in touch with their feelings and their emotions, because that's just that in itself is just a recipe for disaster, because you're pretty much preparing these men to have problems and not know how to deal with them. So I don't know, I'd say that.
There are many institutions locally that one can go to that offer free counseling services such as Lifeline Childline. Healthy communication with friends and family members, especially during stressful times, can ease depression and anxiety. Seeking treatment at the onset of symptoms can prevent them from worsening. Mental illness affects people of all ages and backgrounds, and addressing the symptoms that may signify a problem can lead to successful treatment. When mental illness remains untreated, the symptoms can worsen and negatively impact a person's well-being. Mental health still remains the hidden illness amongst our society.
You are not alone. Young boy sitting at home watching this, young black man sitting at home watching this, young Donovan sitting at home watching this, you are not alone. The behavior you see around you, if you don't see a way out, at least decide that's what you do not want to be when you grow up. The easiest thing for us to start with on this journey of speaking about mental health and getting to a good place of mental health is to decide what we don't want to be in this life, what we don't want to contribute to in this life, and then we'll figure the rest out on the journey. Don't pressure yourself too much and just decide on what you don't want for your own life, please.
To my black brothers, I think the hardest, most difficult journey to take in this life is figuring out who you are. What's interesting is that society places so much pressure on us as men to act or to meet certain standards, just so that we can be defined as men. And a lot of times, I think where we find ourselves in situations where we are either depressed or we're finding life difficult is where there's a disconnect between this is the person I want to be and this is what society expects me to be. So there's that consistent fight because there's two different sort of like viewpoints. And for me, what's been interesting, what I've learned, especially amongst men, we go through life learning a lot of things. We learn how to go to school, grade 1 to grade 12, and then we learn science, we learn history, we learn mathematics, we learn all these things. But what's been interesting for me is it's very interesting how, for the most part, we've never actually been taught how to love and value ourselves. And for me, when we get to that point where we're really learning how to value and honor ourselves and love ourselves, that's when we start, that's when life becomes sort of a very, very beautiful, interesting space to be in. When you figure out as to what are my interests, what do I like, what kind of friends do I want to be with, when you figure out as to do I even like going out at night or do I like staying at home, right? Or when you figure out to say, I actually don't want to date 3 girls, I just want to date 1 girl. Or when you figure out to say, man, I really, really like romantic movies, right? And when you figure out and learn to appreciate that about yourself, I think that's where life really becomes like a beautiful thing.
So many of us young